said she was afraid of retribution.
What?
That was the word she used. That's heavy shit.
The car drops me off, pulls away. I go and knock on the door, and this little tweaky guy answers. He's wearing a t-shirt. He seems kind of fucked up, like he's waiting for his connection. But he recognizes me and motions me in down this long hallway. And then I start to worry a little bit.
It turns out that even the most aberrant sexual fantasy requires some sort of narrative buffer zone. You know?
This is such a beautiful film. It's so warm and intimate, and I really love that it was shot on film and just kind of how it evolves over the span of time. It almost feels like an ode to Andy Warhol or like a musical piece, like very lyrical. And so I'm just wondering, like, what was your process in writing it, and how did it come to be?
Just me writing a series of scenes that had characters I was interested in, that I wanted to be part of some story that kind of got defined as it went along. It was never written as a sort of conventionally structured script. It was always a collage. And eventually it just kind of felt done. It felt like it had its own sort of internal logic. And when I shared it with other people, felt sort of the same to them. And then, you know, when we edited the movie to the script after we filmed it, it didn't make any sense. It was completely boring. So it's very, very different from the structure of the script, but it was always sort of conceived as a collage.
I love that. And I know that it's taken a few years from the process of writing it to creating it, and it seemed like a very like friends involved, and you guys weren't paying for locations, and it was kind of all like collaborative. So I'd love for maybe each of you to speak about how you joined this project and what drew you to it. You can start, Eleanor, if you want. Yeah.
Hi. Joe and I met through a mutual friend, and we quickly started working on a small short film that was like a music video, but it was like this film. I mean, it didn't have the music in it, and it wasn't a video, so it was very unique. Well, it was shot on film, and it didn't have the actual recording, so it was very non-traditional music video. But Joe put together this fake band, and Paul kind of wrote it, I guess, and then we kind of went on from there. The fun part for me, that was shot at the house that I used to live at, so that was just like a really special 3 days where we were all there together, and it's really cool to have that forever on the film.
And I think having made the short film gave us the backdrop of upstate and Eleanor to work with and against Scott's character. So that was an early discussion we had before Paul even started writing the screenplay. So,
what about you guys?
How about us? I met Joe in the early aughts. I still hate saying that, but how else do you describe it? And I was probably in love with him, like many ladies, and very interested in all of his artistic endeavors. And many years later, he said they were, sorry, Joe, just full disclosure, they were putting together a feature. And he said, we have this one scene. And I read it, and I was like, oh, goddamn, I got to learn all that dialogue. But I was game, because I'm a big fan of Joe's and the script after I read it. And yeah, so we did this whole like crowdsourcing GoFundMe business, which is a drag.
Both help.
But yeah, it's just a testament to, I think, you know, both of their talent and our interest in what they produce and put out in the world. And yeah, so I shot one day in Brooklyn, right?
Yeah, she did that scene in like 3 hours. It was awesome. So easy.
3 days to prepare, learning.
On your own, though, no.
Yeah, I think we might have had a rehearsal at my old apartment. Yeah.
Well, Scott.
Oh, hi. I guess I met Paul through the Worcester group. He had seen some shows, and he was there was a guy named Gabe Maxon who did lights for the Worcester group, and they were good friends. And I don't know. I went over to his house. He had a big, scary dog, and he asked me to be in the movie, so I said yes. And it was fun. I also knew Stephanie. I'd known Stephanie for a long time, so I was very happy to work with her, and it was fun. It was like it was a bit like a garage band of movie making. You know, we had this like weird abandoned storefront under a bridge in Brooklyn somewhere, and a tiny little camera that made a lot of noise, and we just sort of like moved around the room, trying the scene in all different ways. It felt very garage band.
The chemistry between you and Stephanie is really palpable and really amazing. How much were you guys working together before filming?
Not really before filming, just on the day, But the camera, as I remember, was like, it was little, you know what I mean? And it was kind of like, I mean, sometimes you'd shoot a scene and the camera had made too much noise or something, so we'd have to do it again. But it was very
an old camera.
Versatile. It meant that we could just do what we were doing, and the cameraman could just get anywhere he needed to get. You know, the camera wasn't
The cameraman being Joe.
Right. I mean Joe. But I mean, he could just sort of play with us, and the camera wasn't something so bulky that it had to be worked around.
I feel like there's such a beautiful quality of this film. It's so warm and it's so lush. And I know that the crew is extremely small. It was you and two other people, right? Like a crew of 3. And so I feel like in a way like that is incredible in terms of movie making. You almost never get a crew that small. So I'm wondering like in terms of performance and like in all the group ensemble shots and just like the intimacies of the conversations, like did that change your processes as actors, like being there? Because it's something very special that you don't see in a lot of films.
They did such a good job to make it feel, even though that wasn't my band, and although I knew some of them, kind of, it very quickly felt like we really were a band. Obviously, we were in my house, and it just felt like a time when I would have been hanging out with friends anyway. So that made it very natural and fun. Maybe nerve-wracking for Joe, but...
My scene did not feel so natural. And I felt like I was unsure of the tone of the movie, and I felt like Joe and Paul are both kind of cryptic. So I'm still not sure if it really works, but I had fun doing it.
Everyone says it works. Everybody says it works.
I liked the idea of this mysterious audition and being an actress, the meta aspect. But yeah, it was nice. We were just like in this backyard in Brooklyn, and it was very intimate. It felt very like,
I have to say, like, I feel like your scene, like, it stands apart from the rest of the film, and it like brings you in. And I feel like
probably because I don't understand the tone.
The meta aspect is really amazing, but it almost feels natural in a way. It almost feels like you're maybe playing like a version of yourself, and it feels like very Lynchian in this sense. And but it's so funny and like great. And so yeah, like what drew you to wanting to do this? Like, did you have any were you like, let me work with you on the script, or was it totally like you read everything? Did you improvise or?
No, there's no improvisation. I think Paul's dialogue was really, it was so well written, and it was a really fun challenge for me to learn this monologue. Unlike Scott, I'm not like acclaimed theater actor, so it was like an opportunity for me to try something I hadn't done before.
Say acclaimed memorizer.
Well, I don't get juicy monologues that often.
Maybe Paul, since you wrote each character for the person before they had agreed to make the film. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as Joe said, I wrote each character for the particular people who played them, and that was based on a combination of having seen people and things, knowing that these were people that we could reach out to without having to like go through representation or some kind of elaborate communication chain, and people who would be game. And I didn't know if Chloe would say yes. I didn't know if Eleanor would be willing to do this to the extent that she was willing to. I mean, we lived at her house, but I did know that these things had to be worth these people's time. So that was a good prompt for me as a writer.
Paul, did you know it was going to be as funny as it is?
I was hoping it would be, yeah.
Do you guys think it was funny?
I mean, tonally, yeah, I was hoping it would have this. Good, yeah. I was like hoping it would be sort of dryly funny, and I knew that I was writing for people who could do that, whether it was just in conversation with me based on like us hanging out, or again things that I'd seen. So yeah. I'm glad it's funny. I described it as a comedy. You know, when we were doing our weird sort of Kickstarter campaign, we described it as Andy Warhol directs a Whit Stillman thriller or some nonsense. I mean, nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. But kind of also, you know, true.
It's very true. That definitely came across like
Aspirational.
Yeah, it was great.
It's its best self, right?
How did you find Stephanie? Because it feels like it was really written for her in a way.
Yeah, I'll let Paul talk about meeting and working with Stephanie.
Stephanie and I met at our mutual friend Ian Old's place at like a dinner party one night, and it turned out that she was in a Richard Foreman play that I was planning on going to see the next day, called Old Fashioned Prostitutes, the public. And I went to the play, and she and I had a drink after, and became friends. And when Joe and I talked about writing something of this size for people that we knew or knew we could maybe enlist without too much hassle, it turned into a movie that I was sort of interested in writing for her. And I knew that she was really interested in doing film. She'd been doing a lot of downtown theater. So it coalesced around her and conversations we had and the friendship that we had.
Amazing. And I feel like what's really inspiring about this is like you have an idea, you have a script, you get people together, you don't have a big budget, you can make a beautiful film and really move people. So I mean, do you have any maybe advice like for writing and putting that out there for other young filmmakers that might be here tonight in terms of getting your project made or created?
Yeah, that's a good question. I remember this interview we did with Stephanie and Paul. I think it was at Rotterdam, and she just said, "Make films with your friends." And I hadn't thought of it in those terms, but I was like, yeah, that's like the reason the intimacy is so palpable, and the reason it works out is because we knew each other and we were comfortable with each other, and we could ask things of each other without even necessarily saying it directly. But that's the advice I would give, and maybe Paul has some others.
I mean, I just think there's such a thing as too much money. I think that a lot of times people are interested in. I don't say that as somebody, by the way, who comes from it. You know what I mean? It sounds very blasé. But I mean, it's to make a film. I think that the limitations we knew we were going to have to work inside of, but the things that we weren't going to compromise on were a really helpful and kind of healthy and generative
boundaries.
Way to work, yeah.
Yeah, but to shoot then on film, I mean, that's not the smartest.
Right. Yeah, but
It looks nice though.
Oh well, of course, but then yes, the bulk of whatever you have to raise, yes.
Yeah.
Developing and
This was a very cheap film, so
16, I guess. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Why do you shoot on 35 then when you make films?
Because people give me money. Too much money? No, I'm joking.
Just the right amount, I'm sure. Just the right amount.
I'd love to open it up to questions from the audience.
I don't know that we didn't have that in the screenplay. It wasn't thought out ahead of time. Because the screenplay was written as a collage and these little vignettes, we felt once everything was filmed and assembled, we could feel free to move things around until it started to feel quote-unquote right or moving in the right direction. And that was something that, it took us a long time. We started this film in 2015 and finished it in 2019, I think. And because of the lack of funding and the stop and start nature of it, we had a lot of time to try a lot of things and move stuff around. And we basically went as no rules as we could, and like, you know, what would it be like to show Gerard getting hit at the very beginning of the film? You know, how does that feel? And it just sort of intuitively went from there. Does that seem accurate, Paul?
Yeah, that sounds right.
I used an Eclair ACL, which is a camera from like the early 70s that I had adjusted so you can make like a more widescreen image. I just liked the format, and I'd gotten into it around 2010. Started digging in, like learning more about shooting on 16. Probably having been like, you know, inspired by New York cinema in the 60s and 70s. Say it again? F-stop?
Stock film.
Oh, stock. Kodak still makes 200T, 50D, 250D, and a little bit of 500T. I have to admit that I use the very grainy stuff you're seeing. Yeah, so right now, or at the time we were making the film, there was a lab in LA you could ship to, and that was pretty scary, so we did ship some stuff to LA to get processed. During the filmmaking process, Kodak actually opened a new lab in Queens, so the rest of it we took to Kodak in Queens, and it was scanned at a place called Metropolis Post in the city. But half the movie sat in my fridge for like a couple years, having been shot but not processed because we couldn't afford to get it processed and scanned. So but that's the resilience of film, is that you can have a latent image on it for many years.
I think I gave you some short ends. No, not on this film. It was a different film. Sorry, I'm confused.
Cool.
Per usual.
Next time.
Can you talk about the soundtrack, like, and your influence? Because I mean, I think.
Oh, you talk about the soundtrack.
Well, no, I don't mean just the music that I did, but I mean the rest of it to me is so unique, and I don't know if you have a lot of inspiration for that, but I've never really seen that kind of stuff too much in other movies where you do so much like collage and layering, and I was just wondering if you have like an inspiration for that.
I don't know if there's such an inspiration. I mean,
your own music?
There is some music that I made with a friend of mine who's in a band with me, and I think what I did is I wanted both. Well, I don't love a ton of soundtrack to a film. I find it a little bit manipulative, but I thought if we could make it so it seemed like it's in the room sounds, like there's a lot of machine sounds, there's a lot of like sounds in the safe house when you guys are talking, to just kind of add layers to it, and then the tonal quality, kind of drone that happens, semi-ominous, that would be rather manipulative. We just like I tuned it to your song so that it could sort of like come in and out of times that you guys are rehearsing. I wanted it to kind of feel cyclical, so you had this like one basic chord happening, whether that was consciously heard or just something subliminal at the bottom. I don't know.
I feel like it had like a subconscious Velvet Underground vibe.
Well, that's
and
very,
like almost like even
high
her, like
praise.
watching her, I feel like she looks a lot like Nico in a way, and has like this whole vibe.
Wait a second. Wait a second.
Oh my God! Yep, there she is.
Wow.
But I really felt that, like, and particularly like the Andy Warhol films that he made of, like, you know, the Velvet Underground reading tarot and all these things with like the heavy droney soundtrack and stuff. Like, it's kind of amazing that no one really uses it in modern filmmaking, but it was really interesting to see that use of layer of film in this.
Oh, what do you think about that?
About the Velvet Underground?
And just the music in general, because you also helped edit things around and stuff.
Yeah, to some extent, but I deferred to you a little bit on that, in part because I knew that you had stronger feelings about the use of music and the presence of music in the movie. I think it works really well, and I do think that there's a kind of like subconscious level at which it operates that I've always been very happy with, especially if I'm watching the movie in a theater or listening to it on headphones, which I'm not like watching the movie anymore, by the way, at all. But yeah, it's great. I mean, I don't know. Like, the idea is to get as much money as you need.
But not too much.
But not too much. And, no, I mean, you know, to have a sense of I don't want to crowdfund again if we can help it. the first chunk of making the money for this movie was crowdfunding, which Eleanor and Chloe helped with, and then there was this like fallow period where we didn't know where the rest of the money was coming from, which is the refrigerator time of the film, and then some people came in and helped us finish it. There was a lot of dumb luck and hope that that somehow got realized. But I don't know if I have any advice other than whatever you need to do it. Crowdfunding is a pain in the ass. It works sometimes.
I also feel like at that time when we did it, it was like really there was a big surge. And it seemed kind of commonplace in a way. Like they were trying to make that Joan Didion documentary and they were crowdfunding. You're like, all right, well, if they need to do it then.
Wasn't as embarrassing.
Mike Lee was crowdfunding movies at that time, I think, yeah. But, people are still doing it. I didn't know any other way. Hopefully with the second movie, we won't have to do that. We'll see.
But it also seems that you guys are so independently minded that, like, to not have any restrictions from any, that's liberating in a way as filmmakers.
Yeah. For now, it'd be nice to make this with a 6-person crew.
Or 4.
Well, let's talk about this privately, Joe. These people are being here.
It was hard and it took a long time, but maybe just keep grinding it out, and hopefully the next one will have some people in line that got through watching this one. They want to help for the next one. See what happens.
Is this the first time that you guys are watching the movie in like a group of people in New York? Since making it, for you it was. And so what was that like for you to kind of experience it with other people, like being so close to the film and in it, obviously?
It was fun, and like I said, it was so funny, and hearing everybody laugh collectively is obviously something I've missed because I haven't been to the movies much. But no, it felt great.
I didn't stay for the screening because I've seen
I
this
was
movie
having
like 1,000
childcare
times.
issues, so I missed it, sadly. COVID is a bitch.
Really is. Well, I appreciate you so much coming out, given the circumstances and the time, and really like sharing this movie with us. And thank you to everyone that came out tonight. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Paul, you want to say something?
Oh, just thanks a lot for coming. I mean, this movie's widely available on streaming platforms, so it's nice to have like a theater full of people watching it.
Very full theater.
In this day and age. Great, thanks for painting the picture, Joe.
Tell your friends we're showing the movie 2 more times this weekend, and really it's a special experience to watch it on the screen, so share it with people you love. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much.